Yep, you can go whenever you're
Hello,
ready.
Kendra. Okay. All right. I don't have a gavel, but we'll bring the September 3rd, 2020 Corcoran Planning Commission to order. We'll do roll call. Chair Jacobs is here. Commissioner Dickman.
Commissioner Dickman here.
Commissioner Scholak.
Commissioner Scholak here.
Commissioner Varenkamp.
Commissioner Varenkamp here.
Okay, and let the record show that Commissioner Wu is absent from tonight. Okay, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. All those that wish, please stand and we'll go forward. And Mike, I don't know, I've been on a couple city council meetings. They get a flag. There you go. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the
Pledge
flag
allegiance
of the
to the
United
flag
States of
of the
America,
United States of
to the republic
America
for which it
and to the
stands,
republic for
one
which it
nation,
stands, one
under
nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty
indivisible,
and
with
justice
liberty
for all.
and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, agenda approval. Is there any comments on tonight's agenda? I only have one. Under item 6, new business, it says public comment opportunity, and I just want to assure myself and anybody else out there listening in cyber world in our community, that does not apply to 6A. Is that correct?
Chair
It's still a
Jacobs.
public, oh, Mike, you've got it.
Sorry. It's the public hearing happened last meeting, but we can still take public comment if you wish.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to confirm because I saw it wasn't a public hearing, but certainly if there's somebody out there that wants to speak for 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes on that, I'm sure we won't have much objection to granting that. So that was the only comment I had on the agenda. Anyone else?
No.
All right. Chair will take a motion to approve the agenda.
So move, Varenkamp.
Second, Schulak.
All right, roll call vote. All those in favor. Chair Jacobs, aye. Commissioner Dickman,
Commissioner Dickman, aye.
Commissioner Scholak,
Aye.
Commissioner Varenkamp.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, open forum, public comment opportunity. Is there anybody with us tonight that would like to speak in open forum? And with the remember that open forum is for any item that's not currently on the agenda. And I don't know, Mike, if there's anyone out there, maybe you want to give them some instructions about how to do the raise their hand.
Yeah, so anyone that's in by telephone only, you'll dial *9 on your phone and that'll raise your hand and we'll call upon you. Anyone who is in here via the online link, you can just check the raise hand icon.
Does it look like we have anybody out there, Mike?
Yes, Chair, we do have one person with their hand raised. Would you like me to call on them?
Yes, please.
Okay, please, the person with the last four digits, 6545, go ahead and state your name, address, and you can go whenever you're ready.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Jim. I'm sorry, you wanted me to state my name and what other information?
Your address, please.
Okay. 10410 Brockton Lane, Maple Grove, Minnesota. We are actually the KOA campground across the street from the Nelson International.
Okay.
And
Jim, if I may, now this is already an item on the agenda. Would it maybe make more sense for you to wait? Well, let me see here. We got to go through minutes, and then it's the first item in item 6, so it'll be a few minutes. Can you maybe hold your comments until then?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, so stay online, and when we, after we're done with the staff report, we'll chime you back in, and we'll be glad to hear. 'Cause I'm afraid that maybe you might say something that we haven't already. I'd rather hear the staff report first, because there are changes since this was before us last time. And
Okay.
then we might be in a better position to maybe understand what your concerns are.
Sure. My apologies for the being out of order. So
That's quite all right, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else, Mike?
No, Chair, I do not have anyone else wishing to speak at this time.
Okay. Since we don't have to close this out, we will move right on to item 5, the minutes from August 6th, 2020. Does anybody have any comments or questions, corrections for the minutes from August 6th?
I did not. Commissioner Dickman make a motion to accept minutes as stated.
I second that motion, Shulak.
Okay. All right, very good. Roll call vote. Chair Jacobs, aye. To approve the minutes.
Commissioner Dickman, aye.
Commissioner Dickman. All right, Commissioner Schulak,
Aye.
Commissioner Varenkamp.
Aye.
All right, the minutes are passed. Thank you very much. Okay, item 6, new business. This is the request for the site plan condition use permit variance for Nelson International, and Kendra is standing anxiously by to give us the update to this plan, which this commission tabled last month. Kendra? If you
Okay,
would, please.
normally we do take the comments before the presentation, but in this case, if you'd like, Mr. Chair, I will give the presentation first, if Mike pulls up the PowerPoint. Just a little different format in the Zoom meeting, so. Okay, thanks, Mike. This is the Nelson International Conditional Use Permit Site Plan and Variance Application. Next slide. The site is on 101 north of Stieg Road. The property was platted as part of the Bellwether project. Next slide. The concept plan was reviewed by the council in January, and the planning commission reviewed it last month, had some questions about, in particular, some of the architecture and landscaping, and tabled the item to give the applicant a chance to revise their plans, which they've done, and I'll walk through that. Next slide. Again, for the record, the request is to allow approval of a conditional use permit for auto sales and repair, which is allowed and is a conditional use permit in the I-1 district, and build about a 34,000 square foot building, which will have vehicle sales, and then in the building will conduct auto repair. When you saw this last month, there were two variances. There was a variance to increase the maximum curb cut width off the public right-of-way, and a variance to allow metal siding in excess of 20% of the building elevations. They've revised their plans and are no longer requesting the building material variance. Next slide. The discretion in reviewing a site plan and a conditional use permit is whether or not it meets the ordinance standards. If it does, you must approve it. But the city does have a higher level of discretion in a variance because the burden of proof is on the applicant to show that they meet the variance standards, including the practical difficulty standard. Next slide. As I said, the building has been revised and they no longer need a variance from the building materials. And as you saw in your packet, and we'll see in the slideshow tonight, the change in the building materials and the elevation design has increased the visual interest and the articulation of the building. While keeping the same building footprint, it now complies with both the standards in the code and the goals in the design guidelines. Additional screening has been added to the west and east sides of the building to screen some of the mechanical equipment, so the screening attached to the building, and then additional landscaping around the site. The landscape plan does provide the shrubs that we talked about in addition to the trees to help provide screening of headlights, and landscaping around the pond in the southwest corner of the site has been beefed up, and they've added fencing along the west side of the site, the back of the site, to provide greater screening to the single family homes to the west. The driveway has been shifted on this plan. We spent some time talking about that last week, and I'll show you on the coming drawings. And they've provided additional information in the packet to show how they are complying with MPCA noise standards, which is the city standard. Next slide. On this slide, it's a little bit difficult in black and white, but the image on the left is the original plan and the image on the right is the new plan. And you can see the big change is that the driveway coming into the site now dips into the site almost immediately rather than extending that private road in the public easement to the west property line. And then you can see a little bit of tweaking down in the southwest corner with the pond and the wetland buffers being added, which shifted the curb line a little bit between the image on the left and the image on the right. In the next slides, I'll show some additional changes. Next slide. So I think in the landscape plan, you can see the colors look a little bit different, but in fact, the image on the right, the new image, has additional landscaping that was not on the original plan. Additional landscaping on the east side adds not only additional trees, but adds shrubbery to provide some low-level screening in addition to the trees. And then on the west side, as I said, not only did they add more landscaping, particularly around the pond, but along that entire west line. They also added a fence along that west edge of that parking lot behind the building to provide screening for the residents. Next slide. The architecture, I think, is where the most dramatic change can be seen. The image on the left was the original texture clad image with pretty much gray, two different shades of gray texture clad. And the images on the right show the change with EFIS. There is a little bit of the texture clad remaining, and more glass has been added to the front of the building. So I think they've done a really nice job of trying to address the code standards, the design guidelines, and the concerns they heard from the commission last week. The building remains a rectangle, but the change in the colors and the textures, I think, helps break up that elevation. Next slide. Again, the site plan does need to comply with not only the ordinance standards, but needs to show compliance with the goals of the design guidelines in Appendix A, and much of that related to the architecture, which they've done a good job of. I mentioned they did add screening around the building, so there is a fence around the trash area now, which was not there last month, as well as around the loading area and the mechanical equipment. So that not only helps make the building look more attractive, it also helps address some of the noise concerns that the commission voiced last month. The building is in the same spot, and the parking along 101 is still the same as it was, where they've asked for the PUD flexibility, which they're allowed to do, to reduce that setback from 100 feet to about 50 feet along 101. Next slide. They also made a big change to the sign plan. I didn't show you the old sign plan, but if you recall, there was a lot of smaller signage on that building, and now they've revised it to comply with the ordinance. We have one wall sign near the main entry on the east side of the building, and one freestanding sign along 101, which complies with the ordinance. In fact, are both smaller than what the ordinance would actually allow. So done a really nice job of responding to those concerns. The one thing I did note in the staff report about the freestanding sign, right now it's in a parking island, and so we either want it to be, in a parking stall, we either want it to be moved out behind the curb or to make that stall an island so that that sign's protected and vehicles are protected, but pretty minor detail all in all. Next slide. The parking is a little bit different than last time, but still exceeding ordinance requirements. 67 stalls are required, and they've got 95, 36 for retail, and the remainder for warehousing and auto service. But they've also got 20 stalls for vehicle sales and trailer parking. And it's of note that they are now showing snow storage, and 7 of those 18 trailer stalls on the south will be used for snow storage in the winter. And from a city perspective, that's fine. The applicant acknowledges that obviously in a big snow year, they're going to have less vehicle sales spaces, but I think they're comfortable with that and understand that. Next slide. This is just a close-up of the landscaping plan. In the staff report and the engineer's memo, we noted the blue line is the right-of-way easement, and so we do need to shift things south to keep the landscaping out of the easement, and it's kind of on the north line in that easement. And then continue to work with staff along 101 to make sure that when we get the final alignment for the water main, we don't conflict with that landscaping. But right now it appears to be fine, but we'll just continue to work with them as we move forward. And still can't see it very well. I thought maybe you could see the fence a little bit better along that west lot line on this image, but I don't think you really can. But you can hopefully see it on your plans. Next slide, Mike. This image I put in here just to show the addition of the screening along 101. This is on the right side of the screen, the landscaping along 101, to give you an example of the landscape shrubbery that was added to the trees, both there and around the building. Next slide. We talked about this. One of the reasons the driveway changed a little bit is access is coming in off 101, and there's a new 40-foot half right-of-way. When the property to the north develops, we'll get another 40-foot half right-of-way, and the city will build a public street that will ultimately extend west to the Stieg property and then provide access to the Stieg property if that were to ever develop. This new public street would provide access both to the Nelson project, but to the industrial property to the north as well. And so until the time that the street is built, there's a private driveway that Nelson is responsible for constructing. And you heard him say last month he was concerned about the amount of driveway he had to construct on a temporary basis, knowing he would have to pay for the public street in the future. So staff does support the change for the shorter driveway as proposed tonight, given the other infrastructure improvements coming in the future. So if you go to the next slide, Mike. We talked again about utilities last month, nothing new here. We're still trying to work through with Maple Grove to determine will we be able to connect to Maple Grove, or will they need to do a temporary well until Corcoran can provide municipal water in the next year or two. Next slide. The lighting plan, we talked about that a little bit last time. They have revised the plan. It appears that there are a couple more details that we need to ensure compliance. Again, the lighting ordinance says light poles are limited to 30 feet or the height of the building, whichever is less. And we're just looking for some details about the pole mounts so that we can confirm the height of those fixtures. Next slide. Staff does find that those 7 conditional use permit standards for the auto vehicle sales and repair have been met and subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. Next slide. As I mentioned, the building material variance is no longer required because it now complies with the ordinance. Next slide. Little more detail on the building architecture. Again, you can see on the top elevation, they've added some windows, which I think really does help break up the building as we asked them to. And then the change in the materials and the material colors, as well as the little material change above the service doors, those little squares over some of them helps to break up that face. So I think they've done a nice job. Next slide. This is a colored rendering. So you can see on this, the screening provided on the north side of the building by the fence that wasn't there before, and more detail about the south side of the building and that loading area. So done a really nice job of making sure those mechanical and loading areas are well screened with fencing that appears to be consistent with the architecture of the building. Next slide. This one shows in the rear of the building, the trash on the south. Again, you see the loading area in the bottom image on the right, and then where the stairs are, you see the trash enclosure. So again, a good job of providing screening to make the building more attractive and also manage those noise concerns. Next slide. There is one variance remaining, and that is for the curb cut width. Our code limits curb cuts to a maximum of 32 feet along a public street, and they're actually requesting 50 feet. In this case, with the change in the plans and the fact that this driveway is going to have to move west when the new public street is built, the city engineer does support the variance for the curb cut based on the finding that as close to the 101 access as this curb cut now is, there is the potential for vehicles to stack and back up onto County Road 101. And therefore, the larger curb cut will make it easier for them to maneuver in and out and avoid that potentially dangerous situation. So staff is recommending approval based on the finding that constructing the private drive would be a hardship for this temporary position, but adding the condition that when the future road is constructed, the approved 50-foot curb cut will be removed and the standard 32-foot curb cut will be installed on the west side of the property off the new public street. Next slide, Mike. So the commission must review against the standards in the ordinance. We talked about this last time. It's a site plan CUP. So this is the planning commission's only time to look at this. If the council approves it at their meeting at the end of the month, the next step would be for the applicant to finalize the plans with staff to move forward with issuance of a building permit. Next slide. And so staff does recommend approval of the draft resolution approving the site plan, conditional use permit, and variance subject to the conditions in the draft resolution. And I'm available for questions, and I know the applicant is on the line as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. Fellow commission members, would you like to hear from the gentleman, Jim, from KOA now? Would that be fair? Or?
I think so, Commissioner Dickman.
Okay. All right, Mike, I believe his name was Jim. Will you bring him back online? And Jim, yeah, I would assume you're listening, but again, you got approximately 5 minutes. If you need more, let me know. But what would you like to say to the commission about this project?
Good evening. First of all, we would like to say that we're glad to see Corcoran develop, and we look forward to seeing Maple Grove develop. And in no way are we opposed to any sort of development at all across the street from us. Our primary concern, as we've come to find out, is the fact that Nelson International is open till midnight, which it sounds like, based on discussions, you guys have addressed lighting issues from potential truck traffic. And it sounds as if you've addressed some noise issues, but I'd like to get some further clarification on the screening if possible. But our main concern right now is our quiet times at the campground are 9 p.m. And so we strictly maintain that. And we want to be good neighbors, and we want to be able to have a good relationship with Nelson International. And we're just wondering if there's any way that we can discuss or maybe find ways to address any noise issues after 9 o'clock, that sort of thing. Whether it be, you had mentioned screening, but I also come to find out you had talked about some other potential options about potentially having bay doors closed, I think, or.
Yeah, Jim, were you listening to the public hearing last month?
I came in after the opportunity to speak, and I had caught part of the conversation where the commissioners were discussing afterwards.
Okay. Okay. Now, Jim, I'm sorry, was there anything else? So you're concerned about the quiet time hours, open operations until midnight, and some of the lighting and the lighting landscaping. I think as it was addressed in the report, it appears, based on the professional staff report, that the applicant has exceeded the necessary requirements for screening, but they did bump that up with those concerns. And you probably heard last month that we did address that, headlights and stuff. There, I think I suggested maybe a short fence in front, but nonetheless, it would appear that those issues have been addressed. I would certainly encourage you to maybe reach out to Kendra or Brad and our professional staff, or maybe if there are particular areas, maybe those can be addressed individually. But as far as the operations, I had the same concern. And so as we discuss that, maybe we can bring some light to that. I'm not really sure if there's anything we can do. As far as the lights, the parking lot lights, the staff report indicates that there are some various heights of poles out there, and that they don't have some of the measuring statistics at this point for the lighting. And I believe that light emittance goes out to the edge of the road or the center of the road. Is that right, Kendra?
Correct. The light, when we measure compliance with the ordinance, we measure to the property line or the center line of a public street.
Yeah.
And so it looks like they're in compliance, but there's just a couple gaps in the plan that we want to confirm. It's important and we want to get it right.
Okay. So I know that those are trying to be addressed. And so again, we're going to now move on to our commission discussion and then our recommendation to the city council. Yes, Kendra? you had a
I was
question?
just gonna say, before you move to commission discussion, since you opened the public comment period, Mr. Chair, you probably want to see if there's anybody else here who wishes to speak in the public comment period before you move back to commission discussion.
Okay. And Jim, I'll give you one last chance if there's anything else, but before that, you know, of course, we just make a recommendation to the city council, and I would strongly urge you, based upon, regardless of what the city or what the commission here does tonight, that that you bring those up, and maybe the city council will allow you to address that at that time to them, because they're the ones that ultimately make that decision. So we'd like to think we're really, really super important, but those are decisions we just don't make. We just make recommendations. So I would encourage
I'd
you-
like to say that I'd like to say I appreciate the time to be able to just voice our point of view from the KOA. Again, we look forward to seeing developments from Corcoran as well as from Maple Grove, and we look forward to hopefully working with Nelson International in the future going forward and having a great relationship with them. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate your consideration of our concerns.
All right, thank you, sir. Mike, is there anyone else that wishes to address the commission on this issue?
Mr. Chair, I do not have anyone with their hand raised at this time.
Okay, well then, let's move on then to the commission discussion and recommendation. As we have done during our COVID process.
Commissioner Dickman makes motion to close public comment.
Don't need it.
Yeah, we didn't officially open it, but
Open it.
Well, the way we've been doing the COVID thing is we generally do a public comment before we start the planning items. And since this isn't a public hearing, we just took the comment, and that's fine. We don't need to close it on this one. You'll have to do that on the next item, which
Yeah.
is a.
Very good.
okay. All right, so what we'll do is we will go down the line, and each commission member state any comments, questions, or feel to cut in whenever necessary, but we'll try to make this as efficient as possible. If you all don't mind, I'd like to go first, just because Jim brought it up, and I'm talking, we'll call him KOA Jim. That was, of course, a situation that I had brought up last month, the hours of operation. There wasn't anything in the report that told us this, and I was quite surprised to hear that, based from the applicant, that they were going to be open until midnight. Without asking the applicant to chime in right now, I'm going to assume that nothing has changed in that. They can certainly tell us afterwards, but you know, and I understand this sound issue, but it is an operation that is going to go. Now, I don't know if that goes, you know, 7 days a week, but when we look at, you know, the the variance request, and it says that it is not, you know, that it's not going to be injurious. You know, the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted. Now, we didn't, that's not Corcoran. We didn't permit a campground, but nonetheless, they are there. And even though they are Maple Grove, I want to give them all the consideration. So, you know, I got on Google Earth, and, you know, there was some materials and diagrams that were provided in this packet versus last month about the distance of their building to the residential section in Del Webb. Also, the materials sent from the city of Wilmer, and those distances, and they all start emanating around 600 feet. Well, if you take a general point from the proposed project and you go out 600 feet, you're going to hit 95% of that campground. Now, I'm just going to bring that up as a point. I am concerned about the CUP and item C. As I stood out there last month in front of the campground, I noted to this commission that the biggest noise problem isn't ever going to be, that the Nelson International. But if you're talking 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that would be true, because the traffic on 101 is far noisier than they'll ever be. But quiet time, 9 o'clock at night, I'll bet that traffic is minimum. And that would be my one concern, is that their hours of operation will cut into some of the quiet enjoyment time for the campground. Now, is that enough to vote this down? I guess I'm not seeing it, but I just want to put it out there as a stated concern that I have as to whether or not, it's upon them to prove that this is not going to be injurious to them. And again, I understand there's some noise studies out there. There's not a lot of specifics, but if we're using 600 feet as the standard, and saying, yeah, we're not going to be bothering anybody, up to 600 feet away. Well, you haven't talked about the campground, which the nearest line is about 180 feet away. They're going to have campers 180 feet from this place. And 600 feet takes you into, again, 95% of the entire campground. So with that being said,
Mr. Chair, can I just clarify something for the commission, just and for the audience, frankly?
sure.
The burden of proof on a conditional use permit on a site plan is on you to prove that they don't meet it. It's the opposite for the variance. The burden of proof is on them for a variance to prove they do meet it. So just to be, you may have misspoke, but I wanted to just for the audience clarify that. And when you review a conditional use permit, if you find that the conditional use permit standards aren't met, your first step as commissioners is to look at what can we do to mitigate the identified concern. And if you can't mitigate it, only then can you recommend denial. So just to be clear, the burden of proof is on them, only on the variance.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kendra. I appreciate that. And I apologize for not getting that right. And it would seem to me, as Jim had stated, if you work with the doors down, that might help. I don't know that that's reality for them, or you just simply cut out the hours. I think the applicant last told us that most of the work that's done on trucks is done at night anyway, and so I think that's where maybe our, an area that maybe can help mitigate some of that is if, they change their hours. We have always looked at any other businesses in this as hours of operation as a significant component of this stuff, but I would have to imagine that most of our work has been done with businesses in and around residential areas and not a campground. I suspect this would be different if there were residentials, 200 feet away, but I'm not going to speculate. I did have one other question, Kendra, and maybe you can help explain. It's the building materials variance. So the last time they came in, they had over 20% of the building area was metal panels. And as I looked at this material now, I see metal panels, and I'm curious what is different about this material that doesn't make it a metal panel, and maybe you can help show us how. I mean, when I look at the diagrams of that building, I see, take out the doors and the windows, I basically see a white material and a gray outline material. And I got to imagine that the the white material is this metal panel that they're using. So how is this new material any different than the material that they had last month? And how do they not exceed 20%?
Yeah, so on page MC 201, you can see the breakdown. So the ephes is the primary material now. Ephes is modern stucco, for lack of a better word. I forget what it's called, what the ephes stands for. But ephes is the primary material, so that zone 2 and, excuse me, numbers 3 and 4 on the building.
Yep.
So that's the light gray, which is the bulk of the building, is the light gray ephes. And then number 3 is a dark gray ephes at the top of the building. And then the metal, that texture clad, is only the wainscoting on the plans today. So that bottom piece is the metal now.
Okay, so what specifically is 4? So, I mean, is it a concrete, or is it I mean, what exactly is it? Is it something that attaches to, that's not metal based?
Yeah,
And
it's like stucco.
it's
Like stucco. It's like a concrete-y mix. Mike, as a building official, do you have a better description of it? I describe it as stucco, if you're familiar with stucco from the old days.
okay, but it's not stucco put on a metal it's not stucco put on a metal panel like item number 1, the texture clad.
No, absolutely not.
Mr. Chair.
It's
Yes.
almost like a exterior sheetrock without being the expensive tip ups. I think when we talked last week, the applicant was saying that to go to concrete tip ups was almost an $800,000 plus expenditure, and they were going to research a different type of exterior. So it's almost like an exterior sheetrock.
Yeah, it's
very
called,
textured.
It's called synthetic stucco, and ephes is an acronym for exterior insulation and finish systems. And it's a multi-layered finish that's applied to the building. So it's applied mostly to wood frame houses in America. So I don't know if I just heard Mike jumping in there. Mike,
Yeah, Mr. Chair and commissioners, it's an insulation. It's an insulated panel that has a stucco coating on it. So you see it a lot on buildings that you probably don't even realize you're looking at it. In particular, our public works building on the architectural, the office area, is an ephes product. It looks just like stucco, but it's got an insulating value to it.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you for that. And the only other question I have, so the second floor, I see has windows. Are they real windows, or are they just, I notice a lot of warehouse space now, that, you know, they put up these facades that look like windows, but they're not really windows at all. So I was just curious, are those real windows, or are they it's just a facade to make it look like a window?
Most of those are facade.
Derek, this is Ryan Nelson. Can I chime in here?
Sure.
Yeah, no, they're functional. That's customer waiting area, lounge, some offices upstairs. So they are functional. So,
On the second floor.
yes.
Okay, yeah, I see you have some.
We don't have a second. I don't think the package didn't include an interior layout, but that upstairs is part storage. It's break rooms. It's lunch rooms. It's locker rooms.
Yeah.
But Ryan, is
it's
that
office
the whole
space.
second floor, or just a portion has occupied?
A portion, but the places that there are windows, there's habitated space
Okay.
behind them.
Yeah, I see there's 3 offices, a corridor, porch, storage, men's locker, women's locker, and mechanic break-in. But yeah, the offices are located along the windows. So thank you, Mr. Nelson, for that. I appreciate that. Let me just quickly review, see if I had any other. No, that is all I had. So why don't we move on to Commissioner Dickman? The floor is yours, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the applicant and appreciate the work that they've done with staff. Much more complete picture from what we were looking at in August. And so glad that we had the extra time to have that more complete picture for you guys to partner with staff to research some of the materials that we just spoke on. And it makes it much easier as a commission to make a recommendation to council, having all this, and appreciate your guys' partnership and willingness to dig deeper into some of the details and recommendations basis of the discussion. So very appreciative of that for a business looking to come into Corcoran. As far as, I know we had talked a little bit about noise. I know second shift was primarily what we had talked about. I know the bay doors being closed is something we talked about too, as well as some of the tools and dampening equipment for noise. So I know there is that risk, but I do feel like in last month's discussion, we talked a lot about how to mitigate noise within that area. And I know that the applicant also mentioned Saturday and Sunday would be limited hours that wouldn't likely be going past 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening on Saturdays, and much earlier than that on Sundays. My only last comment is that it is zoned for light industrial, and this fits within what the CUP is for light industrial. So much like homeowners building next to the Lions Park, or people that would be abutting up against the industrial park in Corcoran, if it ever does get developed, you're on 101, and it is a busy area, and it is zoned for that. So I think the last comment I had is the driveway move, and working with staff and the engineering group, understanding what that responsibility is for that throughway. To me, it makes sense that we're allowing a variance, knowing that there's additional dollars and efforting and money to be spent to have that easeway, and that way that's a pretty fair undertaking, knowing that you're kind of tied with what's going to happen with the development to the north. So I think a lot of work was done in the last probably 3 weeks to get this into a much better, clearer picture for me. So I appreciate staff and what the applicant has done. I'll yield.
Sorry about that, folks. Is that it, Commissioner Dickman? Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I yield back my time.
Okay, very good, thank you. Commissioner Scholak, you're up.
I'd also like to thank the Nelson company for all the work that they did, especially having to come back here a second time. My concerns still remain about the noise issue. Nearly 1/3 of their business day happens from 6 to midnight. I live here on County Road 10, and after the rush hour through Corcoran at about 6 or 6:30, it gets very quiet out here, and you can tell if you can tell noise is a lot better when there's nothing else going on. And I'm concerned about the campground and the residential area being affected by this. And I don't know if the KOA is open, how many months, but I'm just assuming that maybe from the last snow of April until October, there are going to be campers who are going to be wanting to sit outside by their campsites, or at least at minimum have their windows open in their campers. And so I'm concerned about that. And it's not just the sound of the air compressors, it's the dropping of a wrench, it's the it's the sound of semis exiting and entering from 101. I just in my heart think that this type of business would be better located on a highway, at a rest stop or at an exit off of a highway. I just wouldn't want to be living in that area and then have this business come in and not exactly promise, but try to assure me that I'm not going to hear them on a Tuesday night in July. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jim. So very much my same sentiments. All right, Commissioner Varenkamp.
Excuse me, thank you. Same thing, thank you staff and the international group coming together, giving us a complete plan. Well said, Commissioner Dickman. The sound, to kind of sum it up, to be a good neighbor, I think they stated that last meeting that they would do everything they can to keep the doors closed, especially to the east. To the west may be opened depending on the temperatures and stuff. But as KOA stated very well, KOA Jim stated, he wants to be a good neighbor. He welcomes development and those kind of things. I think it's one of those things that they be neighborly and do that. And then also the Nelson consideration to the developments to the west. They're 600 some odd feet away. As Commissioner Shulak stated, I'm about 1,000 feet off of 10, and I can hear the neighbor kids playing basketball on the other side of 10. The sound carries out well out here at night. So it is a peaceful place. Highway 101 is a highway, even though it does get quieter towards the evening. I am fortunate enough to know a couple of the residents, I'm going to call them, in the KOA. They move in and spend most of their summer in there. They're, how do I want to say it, apprentice and such for medical device companies and such. They state they're aware of 101, they're aware of the noise. And when I asked them about Nelson International coming in across the street, they just assumed that if there was an issue, it would be resolved from the residents or with the residents at KOA and the owners of Nelson. So that's what I'm counting on this. Like our council and we have done, this 101 corridor is light industrial all the way up the west side of 101, and that's what we've agreed to. And I believe now this fits that bill. So a couple of CUPs and a couple of conditions and such, I'm in agreement. So thanks for your time.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Varenkamp. Yeah, I think the thing that just pardon the pun, it kind of threw a wrench into everything is just their hours of operation. If their hours of operation went more along, your traditional hours, I don't think we'd be having this discussion. But that is not the case here. And so if there's one thing, Mike, to put into the minutes, just make sure that this was a big concern for the commission, the hours of operation and the noise and the quiet enjoyment of the KOA campground. All right, well, I don't have any other further questions or comments. Any other commissioners?
I would, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chair, I would like to add one other thing. The letter from the mayor of Wilmer talking about that there's a Nelson company there. I'm just assuming that back in 1962, the Nelson company was there, and depending on where it was in geography, that the city sort of built up around it, and maybe people kind of got used to the noise, or people just accepted it as the city grew. Here we have just the opposite. We have residents and seasonal residents already in place, and then the Nelson Company wants to come in. So I'm not sure about the history in Wilmer, but I just see it as sort of a non-factor as far as the letter from the mayor.
Jim, I might be able to help you on that one because the pictures show that the two closest residential developments happened in like 2006 and 2011, I believe, or something like that. So you're exactly right. I would imagine in 1962, Nelson was probably out there in a rural setting. And the development, especially related to the residential. It was replatted as an industrial zone not that long ago, but the residential components did come in far, far after the fact. And again, at 600 feet or better, you know, who knows exactly what that looks like. But you'll find that in the materials, but good question.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Okay, anybody else? All right, so we have here okay, so we have the site plan and conditional use permits and variance permits, variance permit, and it's all in one resolution. So we only have one recommendation to make to the city council. Would that be correct, Kendra?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And I don't think there was anything that we suggested as a change. Obviously, professional staff has a number of items that they say these conditions must be met. They're part of the resolution. So we'll take them at face value there. So unless anybody has any changes to the resolution as it is written, I'll accept a motion and a second, and we'll take a vote.
A motion to approve the resolution 2020-XX is what's on our paperwork here.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Dickman.
Okay, we'll go through the roll call vote. Commissioner Jacobs, aye. Commissioner Dickman.
Commissioner Dickman, aye.
Commissioner Scholak.
Unmute.
Nay.
And Commissioner Variance.
Aye.
Okay, so the recommendation to the city council passes 3-1. Thank you, everybody. We don't get a lot of tabling. And obviously, a lot of people put a lot of work in, especially that quickly in a month. And to Nelson International and our friends at KOA, you know, we're going to all hope for the best that everybody can still enjoy their business and their recreation all at the same time. And I have some hope that is going to be possible, but work together and I'm sure it will happen. So thank you, everybody. Is Mr. Nelson still on? I was going to ask him
I'm
if
still
he,
on. Mr. Chairman, I'm still on.
Do you, Mr. Nelson, coming from Wilmer, do you like left side?
My last name ends in S-O-N, so I'm Scandinavian, yes.
Well, my last name is Jacobs. So that is my family lineage,
Okay.
the house of
Yeah.
Jacobs down there, that had all the left. So they're now up in Osakis, but my father and all his family came from Wilmer. It's one of my favorite places in the world, and so I miss
It's
it.
good to know. Yeah, it's especially north of here where the lakes start is a beautiful area. So I actually live.
Yeah.
I live in the development right behind the shop here that you guys were talking about today. So.
Okay.
But, yeah. No, that's yeah, I like that. Or I should say that, but I don't know if it's appropriate to comment on the noise at this point or not. But you know. The highway is the biggest emitter of noise, and I know it gets slower in the evenings, but we will work with the KOA and whoever else. I mean, we don't currently have any noise or sound shielding at this location. And I did some decibel meter readings of 101 in the evening here last week, just to see, you know, and we'll do our best to work with noise complaints if there is any. We're going to try and minimize any, and we're reasonable people. We've been doing this for a long time, and you know, if we're truly hurting somebody's quiet time or evening, we'll make efforts to correct that. So.
All right, very good. Well, thank you again for all your time.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right, we're going to move on to item 6B, public hearing for a conditional use permit to allow a new accessory building for 9226 Kane Road. And at this point, we will have the presentation by our professional staff, Kendra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a conditional use permit for an accessory building, a new accessory building on Kane Road, and Mike's pulling up the PowerPoint there. It is a public hearing. Next slide. This would be a new building in the front yard at 9226 Kane Road. Mike's got a little delay. There we go. The property is zoned rural residential out there. This is a 20-acre site. Like the one we looked at last month, it does have a lot of accessory buildings existing, 7 existing accessory buildings. The applicant's requesting approval for a 1680 square foot garage. The code allows a maximum of 3969 square feet, and the site currently is just under that at 3485. So the addition will bring them over the max, and that's the need for the conditional use permit in the rural residential district. Next slide. The site is largely wetland on the back side or the east side. There is a creek and a ditch that runs through the site, both on the north and south. But the existing home and barns and the new barn are in that lower left-hand corner, or the southwest corner of the site, outside of the wetland areas. Next slide. And the yellow image is the area for the new barn. So in the upper right, you see the whole site, and then I just zoomed in on where the structures are. So you can see the house in kind of the north central part of the image, and the new barn up in the front. It does comply with the setback requirements, which do allow accessory buildings in the front yard in the rural residential district. Next slide. No existing structures will be removed at this time. The applicant did note in his narrative that as they make some transitions, a couple of those buildings are likely to be removed, but at this time, no removal is planned. We did make a note that the rendering is a little bit different than the material samples, so we do want to just be clear about what color the building is, but it is consistent. We don't have any residential accessory building standards per se. Metal siding and roof is allowed. by a certificate of compliance, which is included as part of the CUP. Next slide. Again, it's a pretty typical accessory building. It's got a covered entry and 2 overhead garage doors, and then a couple of small windows. Next slide. The renderings show it as a tan roof and tan wainscoting with a white exterior. The material samples look a little bit different, not bright white and tan, but more of a beige and a brown on the next slide. And simply included a condition that said the applicant needs to finalize the material colors. And I think the applicant is here this evening to comment on that as well. Next slide. So the CUP standards for an accessory building are a little bit different. They require a certificate of survey, compliance with the general CUP standards, the building material standards, and compatible with surrounding uses. And looking at that aerial, you can see that there's a lot of other parcels in this area with a lot of accessory buildings. So staff finds that the conditional use permit standards are met. Next slide. So now, Mr. Chair, this is a public hearing, so you should open the public hearing, take any public comments, and then staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit subject to the findings and conditions in the draft resolution.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kendra. Much appreciated. All right, at this point, we will open the public hearing. And I spoke with Mr. Emery today, and I can see he is online, as there might be others, I'm not sure, but Mike, do you want to go ahead and, again, to remind everybody, please state your name and your address for the record, and please let us know what what's on your mind for this development. Mike, besides Mr. Emery, is there anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I do not have anyone indicating they'd like to speak at this time.
Okay. Well, again, I can see Mr. Emery is online, but of course he's not required to speak, but if he would, I know he'll probably wait online through the hearing, and if there's any questions for him directly, Mr. Emery, if you would make yourself available to answer any of those questions, that would be great.
This is Rick. I will. Yep. This is Rick. I will be available. Comments, I guess, the color rendering, I don't know why it's different in the elevations, but the color samples are the cream are white and beige that Morton has on their list, so that is the right colors. I don't know why the two are different, but that is the colors that we're going to be using, and they are called white and beige, not tan and brown.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else? Well, and I was out there with him today, and while I didn't see the specific samples, they were chosen to best match the color scheme of the stone front of his house, and I could imagine that they'll work out just fine. So, all right. Anybody else, Mike or Rick? If you could just hang on then, if there's any questions. Otherwise, we'll move on to another speaker.
Mr. Chair, I do not have any other speakers at this time.
Okay. All right. I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, now I'll do that, Commissioner Dickman.
I'll second, Commissioner Variance.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. Vote to close the public hearing. Chair Jacobs, aye. Commissioner Dickman.
Commissioner Dickman, yay.
Commissioner Scholak.
Aye.
and Commissioner Varenkamp.
Aye.
All right, this public hearing is now closed, and we will move on to the commission discussion and questions. Well, I don't have any, so Commissioner Dickman,
No comments or questions from me.
okay, Commissioner Scholak,
Just a couple of points. Is a building of this nature required to have downspouts or gutters?
Commissioner, our code does not require that
Oh, okay.
for an accessory building in a residential area.
And then near the peak on both ends of the barn, are those barn fans on the ends? Or maybe the logo of the manufacturer?
Are you looking at the elevations, not the colored elevations, but the architectural elevations?
No, I'm looking at the colored ones.
Yeah, perhaps if Mr. Emery is still on, you could speak to that.
Yes, I'm here. Those are just the manufacturer logos.
Oh, okay. All right. Overall, I was really impressed by the design and the addition with the walk-through door with the 9-panel glass cross buck design. It made it look less more agricultural and less industrial. And my only thought would be that if it were mine, I would put more windows in there to bring in the natural light and also to break up the long expanses of siding. But I think you have a very good plan here.
okay, thank you, Jim. Commissioner Varenkamp,
No concerns. Thank you. Very good job.
I do have one technical question for Kendra. Kendra, the porch overhang. Now, I know that over the years, I know I have belabored this point, but I'm just curious. So when I got my conditional use permit for my building, and this is in no way to reflect upon the validity of this applicant or his building, but you know, this planning commission, not this one, but the planning commission back then told me and counted as the reason why I needed the conditional use permit, my front porch overhang, which put me over the square footage allotment. I'm curious to know with this, even though it's not significant, mine goes 50 feet, 6 feet out from the building along the entire length of it. But why is this porch not covered as part of gross building area, which of course by technical definition, I disagree with. I'm just curious to know why that wasn't.
That's a mistake on my part. It does count. So we'll need to adjust the square footage. It does count, and I apologize for that. That is building square footage. And if we calculated it wrong, we will correct that for the council meeting. Thank you for mentioning that.
Well, it wasn't the answer I was looking for. I was hoping for, yeah, you know, we thought about that as a gross building area and decided that, well, since it's not enclosed, it really isn't gross building area. But again, it wouldn't impact the application in and of itself in this regard, in this particular case. So,
Right.
okay. All right. Well, thanks for clearing
That's a
that.
mistake. For the purposes of the definition of building, anything with a roof counts as towards the building square footage. So
Okay.
lean-tos we often see on ag property, those do count as well, even if they're open on the sides, those are buildings.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, well, I don't, commissioners, second round, anybody, any questions or comments? Discussion? Okay. Well, would somebody like to make a motion? Let me see here. We've got, we only have one resolution again. Would anybody like to make a motion for a vote on the resolution to recommend the approval of a conditional use permit?
So moved, Commissioner Dickman.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second, Schulak.
Okay. All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Jacobs, aye. Commissioner Dickman,
Commissioner Dickman, aye.
Commissioner Scholak,
Schulak, aye.
Commissioner Variance.
Aye.
Okay, the recommendation for approval passes 4-0. Thank you very much and good luck, Mr. Emery. And Rick, I'll stop on over sometime and give you the number for that tree guy.
Thank you.
You bet. Good luck, and hopefully you'll get your permit in time to get that started yet this fall. All right, let's move on to item 7, planning project update. Anybody have any comments or questions on the planning project agenda update?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
we're talking about the active planning applications yet or not quite yet?
Well, anything on the memorandum?
Yeah, okay. If I can ask questions about Eagle Brook, the church site, did that go through the city council on the 27th of August?
It was tabled at the request of the applicant because we did not have a full council last month. The mayor was injured and wasn't able to attend, so they asked that to be tabled to the September 24th meeting.
Okay. Is there any major changes there, Kendra, or not able to speak to them?
They submitted some revised plans on August 10th, and the staff report that went to last week's council kind of summarized those. They did make some changes, and I would encourage the commission, if you haven't looked at that packet, to take a peek at it. They did make some changes.
Along with that, if I may, so I was the liaison for that meeting. And of course, the highlight of the night was to see, what the city council was going to do with that. So I having it tabled, there was a request by the group of folks down there that I be in attendance. And I don't know what makes me chosen out of that group. But if this is again heard at the next city council meeting, I mean, they made a recommendation I show up, because we were part of that discussion. And I don't think there'd be any objection by the city council, but I can't guarantee that. But as commission members, I would, if you are in attendance as well and have an opinion about why we did what we did, if they'll take your comment, so be it. I think, let's see, Commissioner Variance, you're going to be on the agenda in September 24th. So you'll be getting the city packet. Now, I got the city packet. I did look at it. It is extensive. And so if anybody would like to have use of that, I could certainly borrow it to you, but I'll certainly request it back for that meeting because I told them that I'd be there as well.
So that meeting is on the 24th or it's on the 10th?
The 24th.
24th.
Okay.
Yep.
And of course, all the council packets are online for commissioners or members of the public to take a look at as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good question.
I'm getting concerned that our ordinances and those kind of things, while I understand the neighborhood's concerns and those kind of things, we do have everything spelled out in front of us. And I think the biggest thing that we came out of that, the biggest issue out of that was just Hackamore and 101, the ability to handle that traffic. And my concern is even residential traffic. If that was to be all residential, that would still add somewhere between 70 and 90 homes on that property, which in my calculations, that's somewhere between 700 and 900 added trips into that neighborhood a day. And while we don't understand what the church was saying, that it would be a Saturday type deal and maybe Wednesday, we brought up things like voting and all those things. It could turn into a very, very busy place. And that intersection is going to get more and more loaded with just the residential going in. So I'll be ready on the 24th. I'll make comments if asked and such, but I'm a little concerned that even some of the propaganda that's going out saying that we don't have a plan, we don't have these things, and we do have a plan. We've got a plan out to 2040 that the Met Council has approved. And then again, using our experts, Kendra, Mike, and team helping guide us and such, and what to do and where to go and what to do is right. And again, thank you for respecting our gut feeling about the traffic. So I appreciate everybody's time on that one. Thank you.
Well, I think the other the consideration, if I just add a comment, is as we were making the recommendation to council, we were proceeding with the city of Medina for improvements on Hackamore, which the city of Medina voted 3-2 to halt completely. And so that makes it even more concerning. My primary concern is 101, driving that during normal hours and even during quote unquote church hours. And Hackamore is even more at peril, given kind of no specific plan for immediate improvement as well.
Yeah, Commissioner Dickman, I see Hackamore as just a tarred gravel road and about 200 feet from 101 up, it's lined, but then it's just potholes and it's a gravel road that's just tarred. So major consideration for traffic there. Obviously, we don't want the traffic running through the Ravania neighborhood and those kind of things. But again, looking at it in my past experiences with Lord of Life and then the other church up off behind, I'm trying to remember, the Becker Furniture World and all those things. All of those intersections needed to be corrected. Everything needed to be done. And I still think a 70,000 square foot building in the middle of 20 some acres, in my mind, would be better than 70 to 80 rooftops. I think it's 70,000 square feet. And if you take into account 70 to 90 homes with a footprint of 15 to 100 to 2,000, there's a lot more non-permeable property in a residential area than would be on this church with 850 parking spots. So just a lot of my things. But again, I think our biggest concern is just that traffic in 101. And
well, the other consideration with traffic that doesn't necessarily get caught in studies is a lot of the kids that are 5 to 9 right now in Bon Air, in Ravinia, in 7 to 8 years, those 2-car households are probably 3 or 4 car households with more people per household driving. Now, I know that that's part of a housing life cycle, but the reality is those are young families that are in those houses with multiple car drivers that are going to be exploding in the next 7 to 10 years.
So, Mr. Chair, we did hold the public hearing and it is now on the council's plate. So if people have questions about specific items in a traffic study, I'm sure our Public Works Director would be happy to meet one-on-one and talk about that. But we probably, for this evening, I'd be happy to give updates on the status of anything, but probably don't want to rehash an item from June or July.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Kendra. As long as we're talking development stuff, I want to bring to your attention something else that I saw at the August 27th council meeting, and it relates to the concept plan for Cook Lake, which was the Applewood, United Properties, New Horizon. Now they've changed it up. So they're continuing to work with all the stakeholders and trying to come up with something for that. There's some new twists there. There is now some more apartment units there. And you know, I don't, right now is not the time to get any of the minutia of this. This is all concept stuff. But one of the concerns I heard the council already identify with this is that, and something that y'all may want to, you know, if this ever comes to us, it'll come to us straight at us. And it kind of deals, and they even mentioned it themselves, it kind of straddles what we ran into with Eagle Brook. And what's going to happen here is that there's going to be close proximity to the M&I development, Bass Creek Crossings or Bass Crossings or whatever that is. So single family homes that we put up there on 10, or M&I did. And there's going to be 4-story, they're proposing, their concept is for 4-story apartment buildings right next to it. And there is already some concern that I heard about that, you know, what are these people going to say? So I just want to throw it out there. It's interesting, you know, there's not a lot of data here, but something just kind of keep on your radar. I just wanted to point that out. So, okay. Any other comments or questions on the planning project update? All right, let's move on to the city council report, please.
Hi, it's Tom Anderson.
Yes, Mr. Anderson, how are you? Welcome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I don't get to the planning commission often.
Well, you have no idea what you're missing, man. You got to just
well,
show up.
I'm getting it now. It's thinking it. I thought I was going to be at a you know, this may be the shortest meeting you've ever had, I think, if I don't talk too long. So I'm in luck. So you know, I and I think the rest of the council have appreciated the work that you guys do, because it is the nuts and bolts, the details, that then we don't have to worry about. Most of my experience has been actually with the Parks and Trails Commission, and their outlook is something that's quite different. There certainly are many nuts and bolts and details to look at, but we're trying to look at really big picture things so that, you know, our great grandchildren think that we were all geniuses for designing such a wonderful parks and trails system. So a little different list of priorities, but you know, the city council, well, I speak for myself, I have greatly appreciated the work of the planning commission, and certainly take the recommendations, the discussion that you guys have to heart. It's important for us to hear all those various pieces of input to us. So anyway, well done. Thank you guys. And I'll let you finish your meeting. So I have nothing more specific to report.
Okay, well, this is when I know that while we would all like to think that we go to the meetings and are up to date on everything that is happening, I always enjoy reading this memo because there's some things that I'm not aware of. And I just have one question for you, Counselor. So at the August 13th meeting, it says here, a Charter Commission update. Inform the council that the Charter Commission will be considering a ward system for the 2022 election at their upcoming meeting. So am I to understand, the ward system, you hear it in other parts of the country. So the city would be broken up into a number of wards. And then there is a representative from each ward that would go on to the city council. Is that basically what this is?
That's my understanding, but I believe that item was pulled from the agenda. That was not ready to go. So we did not, as I remember it, and I'm an older guy, so I sometimes lose things, but I believe we did not actually discuss that. So, but that is my understanding of what wards mean. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that could significantly alter, and I'll just say why this kind of struck me, because, as we now get more and more of a population that is concentrated into our improved residential areas now. I was having my tires replaced down at Westside Tire last Friday. And I was sitting out there as I was waiting, and I look and I start seeing city council member signs, election signs for two individuals that are part of the, I'll just call it the Eagle Brook church neighborhood. And I got to thinking when I saw this ward, I mean, the balance of power in this city, and if anybody remembers a long time ago, there were three individuals that came onto the city council. And back when, there wasn't, this was a highly volunteer deal and there really wasn't anything at stake. We weren't really, just doing the basic business of the city, but they altered the city and its timeline for a lot of different things because they came in and radically changed city staff, our functions, the development, issues. And I got thinking that, that might be something that a ward system would prevent, maybe overloading the city council with people that live in one of our improved neighborhoods versus the balance of everybody that lives out here in Corcoran in the rural district. And I could see where there would be maybe a loss of perspective. And so that's why I was wondering. Now it says here that the council informed the council that the Charter Commission was going to be considering this at their next meeting. So does anybody have an idea when the next Charter Commission meeting is? Because you guys may not have heard it, but it says that this is a Charter Commission issue.
I think they only meet once a year, don't they?
I believe that's true.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll maybe try to, follow up with Brad or something. And I'd really like to stay ahead of this. I certainly have some opinions on it, but thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And that was the only question I had on the memo. Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay. All right. Thank you, sir, for joining us tonight, and please come back anytime.
You bet.
We'll go on then to item C, 7C, other business. Anybody have any other business?
None from staff, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, let's review our schedule here, our Lysaon calendar. Item 8. Does anybody see any need for changes? I notice I'm scheduled for 11/23, which I believe would be after Thanksgiving. I assume that's probably the Monday after Thanksgiving, the 23rd.
I think it's the Monday.
Yes,
Is it? Yeah.
Monday before.
Correct.
Monday before.
Man, I should wake up by, from my turkey hangover by then.
Well, you shouldn't have it yet. It's the
No,
Monday.
it's the Monday before.
Thanksgiving.
It's the
26th
Monday
is
before
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so you should be thawing your turkey that night.
Hey, you don't know me all that well, but I'm always doing the midnight run, looking for that elusive thawed out turkey the night before. So, all right, good. All right, well, I'm glad I got that straight. Anybody else have changes or questions, concerns? All right, if none, how about a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Camp.
Second, Shulak.
All right, roll call vote. Chair Jacobs, aye. Commissioner Dickman,
Commissioner Dickman, aye.
Commissioner Scholak,
Aye.
and Commissioner Variance.
Aye.
All right. Kendra, Mike, Tom, thank you very much for your attendance here tonight. And Tom, this was not our quickest meeting, but compared to the last few months, I think we're all just going yippee.
I think I lucked out. Yep.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody. Hey, everybody have a great holiday weekend.
Absolutely.
You guys
Be
too.
well.
Keep yourself
All right.
safe.
Thanks all.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep, bye-bye.